What's going on, guys? My name is Jonathan. I want to welcome you to No Church in a While, the podcast where we discuss church hurt and how to navigate the messiness that is life. And this podcast was started just to help bridge the gap between church people and those who have been hurt by the church, and to bring understanding between those two groups of people and to build a better church together. Because here we believe that God's power will ultimately be felt through the church and in the church. So for today's episode, the topic that we're discussing is how to support someone who has experienced church hurt. And so typically what we see, or what I've experienced, and being someone who has been hurt by the church, I've fallen into these three categories, right? We're going to be diving into three categories of what people tend to do when they go through church hurt, right? And as a best practice, or what I've seen, or what I believe to be true, is that for all three of these groups of people, or people who are, doing these three different things when they experience church hurt, is the first step is to not invalidate their feelings or their experiences, or to make them feel like they're overreacting. And so I've fallen into all three of these categories in different parts of my life. And so I just want to go ahead and jump into the first one, which is those that stay, right? So when someone experiences church hurt, they may be a person who decides to stay. What may happen, and what I ended up doing when I did this, the most recent time that I experienced some church hurt, was I stayed, but I developed an avoidant personality. And what does that mean? That means that they're still coming to church, Sunday, weekly, Bible study, whatever it is, right? Maybe they even go as far as still serving with your church, but you just feel like a little stiff arm from them. You feel as if they aren't fully connected, and that you can't fully connect with them, right? And so the best way to support this person who's doing this in your church or your ministry, right, is to be there for them, just to support them. Do not treat them any differently. If you used to be really close, keep that closeness as much as possible. They're still going to give you that stiff arm, because you lead at the church, right? You're volunteering, or you hold some title, or you represent the church in some way. Just be there for them. Don't treat them any different. The next step I would say is be a friend. And what does it look like to be a friend? It looks like checking in on them, hanging out with them, helping them feel seen. If they come to church, if they're the type of person, because when I was the person that stayed, when I would come to church, I would immediately leave church. So I never stayed for too long. I said hi and bye, but it always felt nice when people helped me feel seen. Like they acknowledged my presence. It didn't go unacknowledged, like, oh, he just came and left, like, kind of feeling weird about him. It didn't matter, because there were those who helped me feel seen. They made sure that they said hi to me, that they said bye to me, that, if it was quick, that they asked me some questions just to be there for me, right? And affirm them, right? Not necessarily you affirm their feelings, because everyone's feelings are valid for the things that they've experienced. But we can't, if the church hurt came from a sinful place, obviously we aren't going to affirm the sinfulness, but the feelings should be affirmed. That person's calling may also still be affirmed, depending on whether they want to exercise that or not. But just affirm them. Let them know that God still sees them, that you, as a church leader, as maybe their pastor, their friend, the person that they were serving alongside, you affirm them and let them know that you are there for them, that you see them, that they still matter, right? And then allow them time to grieve whatever happened, right? Jesus lets us know that in Matthew, blessed will be those who mourn, for they will be comforted. In the Greek, you see that mourn also means to grieve. And we see that here, grieving and allowing them to go through their feelings, to feel the things that they do, to be as sad as they want, as mad as they want, right? Whatever feeling they're feeling, let them get it out, because God is going to comfort them. The worst thing that we can do to this person is ask them to suck up their feelings, to, push them aside, because they're not allowing themselves to feel their feelings. And we see therapists will tell you the same thing, that you have to feel your feelings. You can't think your way out of your feelings. If they want to cry, let them cry. I know that I cried so many times, so many tears, but I needed to do that so that I could be comforted. If I didn't do that and I just held on to my feelings, then I would just be probably building resentment for the church or whatever it is. But in the grieving, is when we are comforted, right? And so that's one group of people who decide to leave your church. The next group of people that we see is for those that leave. And so I also have left the church. It was a situation where I had reached out to one of the pastors, let him know of a situation that I was struggling with. And then little by little, I started being excommunicated from the church and started being treated differently by some of the leaders. And so I just decided to leave. I just decided that I didn't need to go through this. And depending on the severity of whatever's happening or where the person feels like they are in their walk, people might leave your church. It might be for the right reason, it might be for the wrong reason, but they might leave your church. And the one advice that I would say that matters the most that I didn't experience, but I saw, is you have to pastor them once they leave. And what do I mean by pastor them or be there for them once they leave, right? If you're not a pastor, I saw a pastor meet with someone weekly for a couple of hours, I think for a month and a half, of just meeting with someone who was going to leave the church regardless, and that person did end up leaving. He just met with them, answered all of their questions, made sure that they were making the best informed decision, making the best spiritual decision. He just kept meeting with them and loving them through them leaving, regardless of what it meant for the church, what it meant for him. He was just there meeting with them, right? And that's what it means to pastor someone. You're seeing them through their next transition. He's making sure that, number one, they leave well, right? They're leaving their current church well, by meeting with the pastor, letting them know of any concerns, of any things that made them upset while they were there. And then the pastor is making sure that this person isn't hurt for the next church. Because a lot of times what we see in church hurt is that pastors will let people leave, not check in on them, not pastor them. And then that person, when they get to their next church, is a shell of who they were. What they believe, how invested they are in church, they're a shell of that. They're no longer the same. You've seen it with, various churches that were really large that kind of fell and collapsed overnight and hurt a lot of people. Those same people are never the same in their walk just because they couldn't be pastored well before they left. And so pastor people once they leave. I would also say don't cast them aside or treat them like lepers. Sometimes what I've seen and what I've felt in church culture is when you leave that church, people treat it as, especially if it was from a situation of church hurt, people treat it as if you're no longer a believer or if you're following after Satan or, just some like wild thing like that. Like they're still a believer. They're still someone who is following after God. It just is not at the same church anymore. But they're still there going after their calling, going after what God has said for their lives. So don't cast them aside. Church relationships aren't like work relationships. When you're at your job and you leave and you got your work bestie at this job and you go to a new job, you're going to get a new work bestie. And sometimes it means that this work bestie over here that you were at before, you're no longer reaching out to them like you were. You're no longer sharing life with them, right? And these kind of relationships are called proximity relationships. And that just means that you developed a relationship with someone because you were close to them. And church realistically shouldn't be like that. These relationships should be deeper. They should be more filled with love. We should truly care for the next person. And if we care for the next person, it'll show itself in treating them not like they're lepers, but like they're still your friends. Like even if they go to a different church now, you're still going to check in on them. You're still going to love on them, especially if you had a really close relationship with them, regardless of what you do at the church, right? We need to shed some of this silo-style church relationships, right? Your bubble, your circle is only your church. When people who decide to leave your church are no longer a part of that silo, oftentimes you see these relationships no longer be as strong as they were. And they might not be because of distance or whatever's happening, but a lot of times that relationship, if that person left your silo because of church hurt, it's no longer even prevalent. You don't even like call that person your friend. You kind of just like, do one of these. If you see them in public, you're not even really giving them the time of day. And that just further causes more church hurt, like just causing more church hurt. And why does, pastoring them, being there for them, why does it matter for someone who left your church? And this is the part where I'm kind of talking specifically to those who lead, who represent your church in a way. If you're a pastor, a ministry leader, if you lead kids, students, a young adult ministry, if you're the senior pastor, executive pastor, worship pastor, it doesn't matter. If you represent the church in any way, it ensures that people don't feel like a number to the church. It doesn't make it feel like, that they were there to be used for a certain amount of time, and now it doesn't matter because they left, and you're just going to fill someone's slot with someone else to use, right? Church isn't a business, and those that attend are not consumers. And it shouldn't matter that they are no longer, if you want to look at it as a business, right? It shouldn't matter that they're no longer buying from you for you to go in and check on them, for you to go in and love on them, because it's not a business at the end of the day. These are people's lives that we're talking about, their emotions, their callings, their friendships. A lot of things happen when it comes to church hurt that cause a lot of things to break down, and that causes people to leave. And when they leave, we should be there for them. And so I'm going into the next person, right? And the next person is one that slowly fades away. What does that mean? It means that they're kind of there and they experience some church hurt, but they're kind of pulling back, and they're pulling back so slowly that eventually they just don't come anymore, and then they find a new church. But they were there for so long in the slow fade, if you call it, of the relationship, that when you get to the end of their relationship, they were no longer really a member or a volunteer or someone who was there that is memorable. And, they've probably been hurt in a passive way. And what does that look like? In my opinion, it looks like maybe they were leading, or maybe they were serving under a leader who kind of maybe gave some feedback harshly, or said something too meanly to them, or maybe had a mean spirit about them, or, they also maybe heard a scripture used kind of harshly and not in love, or, just used to kind of hurt them. But it doesn't cause them to immediately disengage from the church. They don't pull the plug on the church immediately. They're still kind of there. They're still kind of present. They're doing their thing, but little by little, that hurt, it starts doing this because they didn't express it. Maybe they didn't feel like, whatever, but it's pulling them. It's pulling them away little by little. And the best way to support this person, because you can see it when someone's doing a slow fade. I saw it happening with my girlfriend. She was doing a slow fade, and the best way to be there is to just be a friend. So she started to just get friends, people that she wasn't talking to church about, that she wasn't really, telling them about church. It became about life, and it became about just being a friend. And that helped that person be connected. And eventually she opened up and started to give the liberty to ask questions, right? Because sometimes I think we in Christian culture feel like, right? And this applies to all three people. This is just like a small tangent. In Christian culture, what I've seen and what I've felt and what I've discussed with other people is that we feel the liberty and almost the right to speak into someone's life. And in speaking to someone's life, you're telling them what God says. But if you're leading or you're really representative of the church, when that person has experienced church culture, I want you to think of your relationship as a timeline. And in the middle of that timeline is when the church happened. And this is your relationship before the church hurt. And then this is your relationship after the church hurt. Anything that happened before, if you weren't like this person's absolute best friend, is kind of gone because of the church hurt. and they don't know what side you stand on. Are you treating them different because they've gone through some church hurt and they've expressed it, or because they left? They're very apprehensive. But if someone has experienced church hurt, you do not have the liberty or even the right to just speak into someone's life. And that's falls for any of the categories, right? Of the people that we're discussing. You don't have the right or the liberty because you haven't been a friend. You haven't been there for that person. Eventually, if you want to be there for that person and be that friend, you can start to build the relationship again. And then when the time is right and that person has given you the right to speak into their lives, then you could do it. If this person is openly sinning or anything like that, at the end of the day, it's still, you're going to cause more hurt by trying to speak into someone who you haven't cultivated a relationship with than do good. You're just going to slap them with the Bible. You're just going to hit them, and they're going to stiff arm you even worse. They're going to create even more barriers around having a relationship with you than they would with anybody else, because you didn't take the time to cultivate the relationship and build it where you could encourage them, even exhort them, or even rebuke them without them feeling personally attacked by someone who hasn't built a relationship with them, who hasn't loved on them while they were hurt. And going back to the ones that slowly fade, same thing. Build a connection with this person. See that they are slowly fading away, that they aren't as connected. And if you look at people's eyes, you could see that they're just not in it as they were in the beginning. That fire of serving, of being ingrained in the ministry isn't there anymore. So you got to kind of build it. And you do that through a connection. You just start connecting with them by being a friend, a normal friend, not a church friend, not, we're going to discuss the church, ask them how their life is going, ask them how different things, ask them about their hobbies, engage in their hobbies so that you can then start to build this relationship back up, right? And this relationship shouldn't really be fostered to keep this person at the church, but it should be fostered because you are a friend to them and you love them, right? And so with that, I kind of want to just summarize, right, what we've been discussing, because we've talked about 3 different people, and I want to just read this real quick. It's something I wrote so that I didn't forget it. Regardless of whatever type of or category someone may fall into, they're still a brother and sister in Christ. And we must always be a friend and lead the way in love. Even if their hurt was due to correction, if they were sinning or whatever it is, right? Or maybe they felt like they didn't like the way that a scripture was used because it was used too harshly. We must correct. Everything that we do must be in love. And so that's how I want to kind of summarize everything, is that this should come from a place of love. And it doesn't matter what ministry you serve in. It doesn't matter what your job title says. I know that sometimes church work is a lot, but if you are only focused on the kids ministry and you neglect someone else because they're a part of a different ministry or they are ingrained in a different ministry, that's not what it's about. That's not what love is about. If you are kids, if you are in the student, if you are in the young adult, if you are in the small groups, if you are in the worship, if you're connected to the lead pastors, whatever it is, right? Everyone should be working together to make sure that love is at the forefront of what we do, right? Regardless of job title, regardless of ministry, if you see someone hurting or slowly fading away and you have an opportunity to connect and love on that person as someone who represents this church, then you should take full advantage of that, knowing that it's what we're called to. And so with that, I want to leave you guys with some scriptures. And so I'm sharing John 13:34-35. And it says, "A new command I give you, love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, all people will know that you are my disciples, if you have love for one another." And so this is a command that Jesus is giving us as his disciples, that we must love one another as I have loved you. You must love one another. So as Jesus has loved us, we must love one another. By this, all people, that's the world. So Jesus has first called us to love each other, not the world, each other as he has loved us. Then the world will know that we are his disciples if we have love for one another. If my church has love for your church and love for the other church, this is how the world will know that we are his disciples. If that's happening. And in that church, if my ministry has love for that ministry and that ministry has love for this ministry, then the world will know that we are his disciples. If I have love for the next person and the next person has love for the next person, that is how the world will know that we are his disciples. I want you to notice that it does not say how we love the world, but how we love one another is how they will know that we are Christ's disciples. Moving on to the next verse, it's 1 John 4-7. It says, "Beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God." Again, asking us to love one another because love is from God, and whoever loves has been born of God and knows God. Oftentimes, we want to correct and we want to live a biblical life, but we see here that love is the vehicle with which God and Christ does everything. God's vehicle of doing anything is love first. So when he created us, it was out of love. When he corrected us, it was out of love. When we went through hardships, it was out of love. When we went through successes, it was out of love. So what makes us think that we can correct someone through harshness or not be there for someone causing more harshness? Everything that we should do, everything that we do, the vehicle which we do everything in, should be from love. And that's where it should stem from, love. Moving on to the next verse that I want to leave you guys with, 1 Corinthians 13:4-7. It says, "Love is patient and kind. Love does not envy or boast. It is not arrogant or rude. It does not insist on its own way. It is not irritable or resentful. It does not rejoice at wrongdoing, but rejoices with the truth. Love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things." We see a different array of love being spoken of, right? But the part that's going to really eliminate church hurt, obviously, is all of it, but the last sentence always gets me, is love bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, and endures all things. Endures that person leaving or slowly fading away or leaving or staying and being bitter. It hopes all things. It hopes for those people that do all of those things. It believes all things about those people, all the good things, and love bears all things. It's going to bear the hurt that I commit against someone and the hurt that they commit, right? So if I hurt a pastor or I hurt someone who works at the church, or if they hurt me, right, it's going to bear all of those things because we can hurt each other in different ways. It's not just people from the church hurting us, but it could be us hurting other believers or other believers hurting us, right, that just attend the church. It goes both ways. And then the last one I'll leave you with is 1 Peter 4:8. And it says, "Above all, keep loving one another earnestly, since love covers a multitude of sins." Like I shared, we can hurt each other interchangeably. Pastor can hurt congregant, congregant can hurt another congregant, congregant can hurt ministry leader. It's just the messiness of life. It's the sinfulness of our nature. But in keep loving one another earnestly, it will cover a multitude of sins. If I sin against someone, if they sin against me, regardless of title, love will cover that sin. And that's how I want to end this, that love will cover everything. Love will be the vehicle that we get to somewhere. Love will be how we experience heaven on earth. Love is how we experience the power of God, because God loved first, we are able to love. Much love to you. Cut that last part out. Lord have mercy, I choked. All right. Keep loving each other, and that is how we will experience God. Here on earth, with each other, with others, God happens in the multitude of people. Where two are gathered, that is where he will be. And I promise you, it will be in love. I love you guys. Much love to you all. Thank you guys for watching another episode and joining us together. And this is just to build a better community. This isn't just things that I'm experiencing on my own. I'm pulling together from different experiences, different people, and eventually you're going to see that more guests are going to join us, people who are more experienced in this field, and we're just going to build a better church together. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure you like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment what kind of episodes you want to see, what kind of topics you want to see discussed about church hurt, so we can make sure that we produce those for you guys as we build a better church. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, make sure you write a review. Whatever you write, we're going to go ahead and support it, right? We want to see what you guys think. And also on there, make sure you write different topics that you want to see discussed. In the description, you're going to see the link to the Patreon. It's only $2 a month. You guys can join us, come alongside us in this journey. You're going to see exclusive content. You're going to see content early. You're going to be able to poll on whatever we get from the comments, right? We're going to put it on a poll on the Patreon. You're going to be able to vote for whatever we put out next, okay? Make sure you guys tune in to the next episode. Love you guys. Bye.